Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to just do a little discussion on the minimum number of knives that you really need as opposed to stuff that you collect or that you have above and beyond what you would need. Mainly I'm going to talk about these 5 different types of knife in the foreground, and then I'm going to talk a little about the the stuff around them. But in summary, I pretty much believe that if you own more than, say, 5 or 6 knives, not counting your kitchen knives, but if you own more than 5 or 6 knives, I pretty much consider you as collecting knives. Because basically, if you have a small, medium, and large sized fixed blade, and like a medium sized folder and maybe one larger folder, I pretty much think that those 5 different types of knife can pretty much do like 99.99% of all the different jobs that you would need any knife for. Alright, so I'm just going to show 5 knives that I think would pretty much cover all your bases. These are just examples of each category, and after that I'll talk about substitutions, higher priced ones, etc. Alright, the first category would be a large sized fixed blade. This is the BK5. Alright, it's a K-bar Becker Magnum camp knife. Has about an 8-inch blade. You see the grind on that, that's flat up to that bevel. And you see that type of tip. This thing can pretty much do anything you would need to do. Anything from, you could definitely chop some, you could baton, you could butcher a large animal, you could use it as a weapon, as a soldier's, it could be used as a soldier's combat utility knife. It's a camp knife, survival knife, a fighter, butcher knife, pretty much does it all. Now in this category of large fixed blade, a lot of people just use another K-bar, just the traditional USMC K-bar. If you want to see a comparison of these. Alright, the BK5, it's about an inch longer, and it has, it doesn't have a saber grind. Alright, and I think the next category would be medium-sized fixed blade. Something around 5, maybe 5.5 inches in blade length. This is the very old school pilot survival knife. This one was made by Ontario. Carbon steel blade, sharpened swedge there. You can hammer things with the pommel. And this is a proven design, been in use by the military for decades. Alright, and this would be for tasks that you need a tough knife, but you don't want to pull out your 8-inch fixed blade. This is just, it's a more handy size. That's why pilots use it, obviously. Vehicle crewmen. But yeah, it's a time-tested design. Now there are a lot of options in this category. It's basically like a nicer version of this. Obviously it's more expensive, but it has a convex edge that was, that was done by hand. Uses A2 tool steel, but basically all this is just a bit higher quality version of your classic pilot knife. Alright, and let me just show one more in this category. A very popular, this is a tough knife, and this thing will chop like crazy. The ZT100, and as you can see, it's pretty much in the same size category. If you have more money to spend, these go for about 30 or 40, but if you have more to invest in that category, the ZT100 would do you quite well. Alright, the next category would be your small sized fixed blade. Just a little small camp utility. In this case, this is a Martini Carbonox. They go for about $40. You see it has a mirror finish, and it's a Scandi. It's a typical, these are made in Finland, typical Scandi edge, Nice big handle. This will slice. I mean, this is just a super slicer. And this small fixed blade, it's just what you pull out when it would be too cumbersome to pull out a bigger one, and you just have a little small task like cutting some cordage or something. No need to pull out those big guns. You know, and you could also skin game with it, no problem. It would even work as a defensive blade, and it would be very nasty at that. There are a lot of options in this small fixed blade category, you know, Mora knives. We just show two different options. Maybe you're doing stuff near the water, stuff near the coast, rivers, etc. You might want your smaller knife to be a maritime knife. In that case, this has a cutter for cutting cordage on boats. It's double-edged. You can execute a fish with it. If you're you know, spear fishing, obviously, depending how big the frickin' fish is. But it's double-edged with a saw. Serrations there. And, you know, so it depends where you're going. You know, but if water's going to be prominent, you might consider this. And one more knife in this category. This is a new silver stag knife I got. D2 steel. It's a Skinner. It's very nice. You know, this would be more of an American, a classic American design. But yeah, as you can see, you know, it fits in that category. There's a lot of different ways you could go, but in general, you know, you can't go wrong with the Scandi designs. Alright, and I'm going to skip over the large folder category for now because I think it makes more sense to start at your EDC everyday carry type folder. I've already reviewed this, but this would make a great little just handy folder. And when I talk about these knives, I'm not just talking about doing stuff outside in the woods. I'm talking about everything you would need, whether freaking, you know, walking around in a suburb or whatnot. Right, so this would be a nice little everyday carry utility blade. It's a little tight. It is 3.1 inches. This is the more expensive version, but yeah, it's pretty much the exact same steel, exact same blade, little different handle. But yeah, I think one key category would be the handy everyday carry utility tool function type folder. And I would choose one of these, you know, as a baseline. All right, and this is the Spyderco Mannix XL, or Mannix 2 XL, sometimes called the Mega Mannix. And this is your slightly larger folder. Some would call it a tactical folder, but you could also just consider it, you know, basically a work knife, but for bigger, heavier jobs. And this Mannix 2 XL, this is a great knife. This would be perfect for that role. As you can see, there is a significant difference in size between this category and the EDC category. So I do think it is useful to have one in each category. If you just need to travel light and you're going to have light tasks, carry this. For bigger eventualities where you can't carry a fixed blade, that's where this category would come in. So really, I pretty much think you only need 2 folding knives. So if you have more than 2, you're a collector. Now the Mega Mannix, it is a little bit of a pricey knife, but I think it's worth it. But if you're willing to go a little bit higher, right, there's a lot of options in this category. I'll just show one more just for variety. This is my Emerson Bushman, and this would make an excellent knife for that category. Just to see a comparison, the sizes. You could do a lot with this knife. I mean, you could skin game with it. You could definitely defend yourself with it. There are a lot of Emersons do sometimes have fit and finish problems. I got lucky. Mine was perfect. So, but yeah, you can go up and up and up in price. But as a baseline, this wouldn't be bad at all. All right, so I believe that if you had those 5 knives that I showed, I think those 5 knives could cover virtually almost anything you would ever need a knife for. Between those 5, you have everyday carry, you have utility, you even have, defense, military combat. You have something that could chop, that could baton, skin game, cut cordage, prepare food. I think those 5 knives, or those 5 categories, pretty much cover almost anything you would need. And I did make sure to show things that were $100 or less. Okay, nothing above $100, because I don't want you to think you need to break the bank to have what you need. All right, these would all work perfectly fine. And yeah, there's more expensive stuff. There's fall Niven knives and stuff like that that could that would be great. All right, but they're not strictly necessary. The prices on these, very doable. The Becker knife, I believe they're around 80. The Ontario, around 35. The Carbonox was 40. Mega Mannix, I don't know what those are, like 80 to 100, I think. The buck knife is 90, but the version with a different handle is only like 60. Okay, so this is perfectly doable. I mean, even if you're a teenager that's just saving up from a part-time job, you can have a knife that can handle, or a small knife collection that can handle anything. All right, and there are ways of actually combining categories if you get really pressed and you really want to go down to even maybe just like 3 knives as your entire collection. You can get a knife that's a little bit bigger than the medium and a bit smaller than the large. For example, this Cold Steel Search and Rescue knife, Sanmai SRK. It's a little bit bigger. It's about an inch bigger than, the medium category, and it's about an inch shorter than a K-bar. All right, so you could combine the large and medium into just basically, I guess this would be medium large. And the same thing with the 2 folders, right? You could, for example, the Endura, a classic knife, it's got the blade length and overall length is more, it's a little bit longer than most everyday carry, but yet the slimness, all right, just how slim it is and how lightweight it is, especially if you got the FRN version. This could be seen as a combination design. It has some of the easy to carryness of an EDC knife, but the length and the handle length of the larger category. Alright, now some people might want to add a few more categories, like say a really small or an extra small size category. And for that, if you want an extra small folder, you could call it a keychain knife. I would definitely recommend Spyderco Dragonfly. And I got the fully serrated because it's such a small knife, I thought I might actually end up doing more of a sawing motion a lot of times. And that's what serrations are for. Some people might want a fixed blade for extra small category, in which case this Boker Rambler, the finish it's almost mirror. You see that? That's nice. Such a small handle. It's a 3-finger or even 2-finger handle, but gives you a lot of cutting power. Alright, so that would be the optional extra small category. I don't think this category is strictly needed, but it sure is convenient for a lot of people, especially if you live in a city or suburb. You need something super small. Alright, so those are 2 options there. Alright, and what are these bigger blades? Well, these are not knives, but they are blades. Figured I'd include them. If you plan to do a lot of outdoor stuff, you're going to need 1 larger category, right? And, in a very general rule, if you're in the southern hemisphere, probably a machete would be the most useful larger blade. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you might want to consider a tomahawk. It really depends exactly where you are, but that's just a general rule. And if you are going to go the tomahawk route, this is a really cheap version of the Vietnam tomahawk design. All right. And this is the United one, so it was only $20. But if you were really going into an intense survival situation, I would recommend, you know, the same Vietnam design, but get a more expensive, you know, better quality made one. I'm sure Benchmade has some real nice ones, but this is just an example. All right, because this, you know, no matter how good your knife chops, obviously something that's top heavy and this long, you know, obviously it will be able to chop better. And there are hatchets that chop even better than a tomahawk. A tomahawk is a compromise. You're supposed to be able to use this as a tool and to defend yourself, you know, against, you know, hostile humans or hostile animals. All right. And it's also lighter. It's going to be lighter than a dedicated hatchet. All right. But you can get a lot of use out of a hawk, so you might want to add that category. And if you're more in a jungle type setting, you know, let's say a tropical setting, you know, Central America, or, you know, like the Philippine Islands, places like that, you might want to go with a machete. And I think the barong design, this is a barong design, I think this is a great all-around design. You know, there's a lot of different types of machete. Obviously, this is going to clear vegetation, and it has, you know, it has 1,001 uses in a jungle area. This is the Condor barong. They go for about 25 to 35. If you want to go more expensive, all right, this is a barong. It's the combat barong that's imported by Chris Cutlery. It goes for a little bit over $100. And this is almost, you know, it's between a machete and a sword. It's rigid, and it is thicker than most machetes, but yeah, very nice, high carbon steel. And, you know, it's just kind of an upgrade of your less expensive barongs you could buy. Alright, so there you go. I hope this has been an interesting discussion, and maybe it answered some questions. If you're not really interested in becoming some crazy collector, but you just want to know, like, what's the minimum number to just cover all your bases? Well, you know, this is just my own personal opinion on that question. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for many more. Peace out, dudes.